address some of the points she made because they're all just egregious lies. I mean, she's a paid propagandist for the state of Israel.
That doesn't qualify as a legitimate intent to carry out a genocide. They included one from a comedian on there as well.
Strip.
Not to mention the fact that if we talk about the illegitimacy,
it's completely decimated. Every cultural aspect of life in Gaza has been completely obliterated to make it uninhabitable and unsurvivable for future generations there.
I mean, that is hard to...
genocidal. 5 pages just in the ICJ ruling that clearly lay out the explicit intent to carry out genocide. And I'll just point to 2. The Israeli president, who said shortly after October 7th that no civilian in Gaza is innocent, and that they should have overthrown Hamas. And because they didn't, they are essentially worth, killing. And then you have the defense minister shortly after October 7th that these are human animals and we need to act accordingly, as he announced the complete siege of Gaza. So taking all that into account, I would absolutely constitute what is happening is genocide. And Israel needs to be held accountable and stopped immediately because it's the gravest crime against humanity that a state can commit. Just flagrant lies for the last minute. When I was on this show 10 years ago, I was actually speaking out against RT on Russia Today. Can you say the same? I'm a completely independent journalist. You are literally a paid propagandist for the Israeli military. You just had the audacity to sit down with an Israeli military official.
From the Israeli military, and I would be happy
so you just were working for free? We know that almost as many civilians have been shot by Israeli forces just trying to scavenge for aid and food than civilians have died on October 7th.
That is blatantly false.
This is regular routine massacres that are happening of just desperate, starving Palestinians that are amassing to seek food. Is there anything that is more depraved than that? Than to shoot
earlier
desperate
this week, 7
people
million,
seeking
7
food.
million pounds of
You can't
food.
just
Food
keep saying
alone entered
Hamas.
Gaza.
Look, what precipitated even the origin of Hamas? Hamas didn't just grow out of thin air. I mean, it was precipitated by
but what about my question, though?
Decades of brutal occupation and ethnic. Hamas is reacting. They're an armed resistance group trying to fight for their liberation.
I'm not justifying anything that they've done.
And the United States also called Nelson Mandela and the ANC a terrorist organization. I think they're an armed resistance group trying to fight for the liberation of Palestine. I'm not going to sit here and give an obligatory... Do you think Israel's a terrorist organization,
of course
Emily?
Not.
Do you think Israel's a terrorist organization?
Abby,
obligatory condemnation of what I will do is condemn the roots of the violence, because inevitably you will have blowback when you deny millions of people basic human rights, when they're living under brutal medieval siege and barbaric military occupation, a fascist military occupation in the West Bank. Hamas doesn't govern the West Bank. Look at what Israel has done in the West Bank.
This entire war has been because of what Hamas did on October the 7th. You can go back in history.
Not.
You can go back in history and you can find arguments on both sides in the last 70 years. Right, I've had the arguments many times.
No, because
you cannot dispute
what you're doing is...
What am I doing?
What you're doing is conflating and pretending like there are 2 equal sides. Oh, they've just been fighting for decades. There's always reasons on both sides to start the violence. No, that's not true. There's one side that's an occupying, colonizing force that continuously and violently expels and subjugates and brutalizes and terrorizes the other side. They are living under the boot of Israeli authorities, whether you're in Gaza and occupied completely militarily by the outside, or whether you're living under a fascist military dictatorship in the West Bank.
So do you, if you believe, okay, so if you believe,
violence.
Okay,
that is the root of the violence.
Let me ask you this.
75 years of ethnic cleansing and apartheid.
Right,
you condemn the actions of Israel for killing 13,000 children?
I don't accept that 13,000 children have been killed. That hasn't anything that's been verified.
This is the problem.
But it depends on the context of what's happening. Do I condemn certain actions of the state of Israel? Absolutely.
Their mass rape, the beheaded babies, the ripping the babies out of pregnant women's stomachs. I mean, all of these things are such egregious lies. Nothing that Hamas did on October 7th compares to what Israel has done in response.
No, I'm asking you a direct question about...
Are you doing the same thing to Emily? And if not,
just asking,
why?
do you think it was wrong?
Why are you not sitting her
do you
and
think
picking
it was
apart?
Wrong?
Is it wrong to kill 13,000 like watching Nazis?
If it's wrong to kill innocent civilians, Abby,
on social media, to understand why there's blowback for horrific policies of apartheid and ethnic cleansing. There's obviously inevitably going to be blowback and violence for those policies. Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and condemn Hamas. I'm not going to do the obligatory ritual.
I hear you.
Ritual that everyone is browbeaten into doing. I'm just not going to do it, Piers. I mean,
honestly,
what Israel is doing right now is committing
your
genocide.
denial
Decimated the entire strip, demolished every aspect of civilian life, surgically striking doctors alongside their entire families, killing over 100 journalists, many in targeted assassinations alongside their entire families. I mean, really the best and brightest in Palestinian society in Gaza has been destroyed. IDF soldiers posting on TikTok that they're just blowing up mosques because they're bored, looting and pillaging women's lingerie. I mean, it really is depraved levels of sadism going on here. 30 of them were kids for throwing stones. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. When Hamas says release our hostages, that's who they're talking about. When they say the removal of Israeli troops from Gaza, I don't see how that couldn't be complied with. I mean, look, there should be a negotiated settlement. If you want the hostages back today, that could happen. And that's why there's thousands of Israelis protesting in this street.
Well, Hamas have just rejected the latest peace deal offering.
Well, okay, is it a permanent ceasefire? Because if you're just talking about a 6-week ceasefire before, well then, yeah. I mean, Israel's saying they're just going to continue the genocide after 6 weeks. How is that?
Do you think? Let me ask you this before I go back to
won at the
before
end.
I go back to
Emily.
Emily.
I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Palestinians of who their leadership should be. What I will say is Hamas isn't actually the most popular faction in Palestinian society, and Hamas is only the result of Israeli policy of brutal apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and occupation. That's why Hamas exists. Any type of Palestinian leadership that has arisen is a direct result of Israeli brutality. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of Palestinians and say what should or should not happen or who they should and should not elect. But I will say that Hamas is a democratically elected leadership of the Gaza Strip. No, he's committing genocide. He should be tried at The Hague and put in The Hague. And
that's a different question.
I mean, he's committing
different
genocide.
Question. But you say you can't interfere in Palestinian politics, but you're very prepared to interfere in Israeli politics. Let me ask you, Emily.
Well, because he's committing genocide.
Okay.
He's committing genocide and he should be tried and thrown in a prison.
It's a matter for international courts. Emily,
and that's what international courts are. Right. That's what international courts are going to do.
None of them have actually spelled out crystal clearly it is genocide.
And can I